Hello, everybody, and welcome to an Overruled episode on an unusual night. And I'd like to welcome my guest, Might Be Wrong.
How are we doing?
I'm good. He might be wrong, but probably not. I
It's
love that.
unlikely.
I love that tagline, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, so I've been meaning to have Might Be Wrong on for a while now. We've been talking about it for probably months, if not a year. I don't know, but we finally found a case that she wanted to come on and cover. So I'm happy to do it. But we have to address the elephant in the room. Both of
Did
us were
something
just
happen?
some something happened. um Might Be Wrong and I just were on our other friend Frank's channel, from the Let's Be Frank YouTube channel. He's been on the show before too, talking about something that happened this after like an hour ago, right?
Yeah, it's like hour and 15 maybe
Yeah.
tops right now.
Somebody shot President Trump, ex-president, maybe to
No,
be president. Like
President Trump. Just say
he
President Trump.
keeps the title. Is that how it works? I'm not
Absolutely.
that into
I don't
politics, so
even
I
say
don't know.
former president about Obama.
So yeah, President Trump was shot. He just got grazed in the ear. From what I hear, he's fine. And
But a
so
flesh wound.
yeah, just a slight wound. But the reports that I was seeing is that somebody else who was in attendance at the rally did pass away. So just keep that family, that gentleman, that family in your prayers today. Everybody
Yeah.
out there. We might have a light audience because of this as well, but I usually get all of my audience on the replay anyway, so it's fine.
There you go.
So we're here to talk about Tawana Brawley, and you had heard of this case before. A lot of people that I told that I was covering this case had no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was I didn't hear about it at the time because I believe I was like 7.
yeah. No, neither did I. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you start digging into like any kind of racial distress or
Mhm,
tension or the civil rights movement at all, which
mhm,
I was interested a long time ago. Like back in 2010, my wife and I actually um went up through Selma, Alabama, up to
mhm.
Montgomery. We did the whole civil rights walk and the tour and
Yeah,
all that in that area because I've always been very interested in that. And so you definitely hear about these. Yeah, Emmett Till is one of those stories that I think everybody should know about.
I
Um,
mean, I should cover that case sometime.
well, it's so
'Cause
brutal though. Like, I mean, that's a rough one. Anyway, so
yeah.
there's a lot of these stories that are on both sides. Some of them hoaxes and some of them real. And I think
Mhm.
it's good for people to, have a complete knowledge of what our history is as best you
Absolutely.
can. So,
And to see the origins, and I'm sure things like this had happened beforehand, but this is one of the original race hustler type stories where they took something that was they didn't research and didn't do any background at all, and pushed it in front of the American people to try to cause a race riot. As far as I could tell, we'll get into all that
yep, yep,
today, but they do this, they continue to do this. They did this with George Floyd. They do this over and over and over again, and it's odd to me that people don't see it when it happens. It takes some time and some, you know, some distance for people to realize what wool has been pulled over their eyes, I guess you could say.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and this
So
is a complicated one too because there's and we'll get into it obviously, but she was also a victim at the
oh,
same time.
yeah.
So, it's as much as I will share these thoughts I have about what she should have to face with this.
Mhm.
You do have to have a little bit of empathy for the fact of,
Oh,
she was
yeah.
victimized too. So,
Absolutely. So, on a brisk November morning in 1987, yes, we're going way back, a 15-year-old girl was found on the green of an apartment complex in Rappingers Falls. I'm going to mispronounce that every time.
is it
New,
rap? I thought it was Wappingers.
maybe it's Wappingers. That's probably more correct. Wappinger Falls, New York. Seemingly unconscious, she was wrapped in a black garbage bag and had cotton stuffed in her ears and nose. She had feces smeared all over her body, and parts of her hair was cut off. Her shoes were cut. Her pants were burned in the crotch area, and the words "pimp N-word." I'm not saying the word, and N-word B word, and the KKK were written on her torso in charcoal. Tawana Brawley appeared to have undergone an extremely traumatic experience. So Tawana, her background is she was born December 15th, 1971, and she lived with her mother, Glenda Brawley, and her stepfather, Ralph King. Tawana was an honors roll student at Ketchum High School. Interrupt me with comments anytime.
I got you.
Okay. So 4 days before she was found, she had skipped school to visit her boyfriend, Todd Buxton, in jail. Buxton was serving a 6-month sentence at the time at the Orange County Jail in nearby Newburgh. It is unclear what crime he was in jail for, but he was convicted of it and serving a 6-month sentence. I searched and searched to figure out what he was in jail for.
I was going to ask you if you knew how old he was too. I was curious about that because
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how old he was, and I don't know what he was in jail for. Very little information on that guy.
Because she would have been 16 at the time.
15.
15, my bad. So she was 15 at the time.
She was born in December. Yeah,
that's right.
She's
December.
Not quite.
Yeah. So she's 15 at the time. Usually, juveniles do not get held at the county jail. They usually go to juvenile detention, especially at this time. This is in the 80s. Like that was that there was the juvenile detention system was pretty big then because they were really trying to separate them and try to keep them from becoming career criminals.
As they should.
As they should.
Yeah.
It's not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But I'm just sitting here going, if she's visiting the jail, this guy is probably committing
18?
another crime also that he hasn't been caught for there. But anyway.
Well, I mean, I didn't look up the laws in New York either, because sometimes there's a law where it has to be a certain number of years apart when they're both teenagers and things like that. Yeah. Also, the age of consent in a lot of states, especially back then, was 15
it's changed.
or 16.
That's true. Yeah, you might be right. Anyway, I just was like, if he's in the county jail, this is an adult, so
yeah,
kind of weird.
True. So she, after she visits her boyfriend in jail, she goes to her boyfriend's mother's apartment, visits with her a little bit. So it seems to me like this is a longtime boyfriend, because you wouldn't be visiting the mom as well, I wouldn't think, unless it's somebody who's close with the family. You know what I mean? Or knew each other for many months, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to relationships I had at the age of 15, and a 3-month relationship felt like forever back then, so who knows?
And and there's it's weird, but there are a lot of times where you'll see long-term relationships where let's say she was 13 and he was 16 and they were friends of the family or whatever, and here it's progressing. They know each other. Maybe they're in the same neighborhood. There's a whole lot of reasons for that, but yeah.
Definitely could be. So she takes the bus home, and she's taking a bus on this Route 9 North and gets off of the bus at this mobile gas station right here and starts walking on this road. What direction is that? I have no concept of time or space. She was walking west on Middlebrush Road. So she gets off the bus around 8:30 p.m. And according to Tawana, everything I'm about to say now is her story, what happened to her that night. She gets off the bus. The bus continues north along Route 9. She crossed the street and started to walk towards her home on Middlebrush Road. A green sedan pulled up next to her. A white man who was approximately 6 feet tall jumped out of the car, flashed a badge at her, and told her to get in the car. Tawana said, "No, I'm not getting in the car." And he grabbed her and shoved her in the car. So kidnapped her off the side of this road. And you can see even now, this is a 2024 map. There's still wooded area and businesses. There's not houses along here. So it would have seemed like a secluded place, even now, and probably more so at the time. She was taken into a wooded area where she was raped and sodomized by 6 white men. Once Tawana got to the hospital, she didn't speak to the police. She was kind of out of it. She seemed unconscious for a while when they found her, and wasn't really speaking at all, not just to the police, just wasn't speaking. Her family then requested that they bring in a Black officer to speak to Tawana. What do you think about asking for a specific race of a police officer to take your statement?
Well, first of all, I will say that her being quiet or silent makes
Mhm.
sense to me. If
Mhm.
even like if everything is true
Mhm.
that's being reported at that time, it's like it's completely understandable for her to be in shock, to not want to talk, to probably want to
Mhm.
shut down and go to sleep.
Yeah,
Like, like if you've ever experienced any kind of trauma, like that's very
absolutely.
common. You just want to go to sleep because you feel like you're separating yourself from the event through time, the magic of
Yeah,
time travel by
people shut
sleeping.
down, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So all that makes sense. And honestly, I have zero problem with her requesting a Black officer.
Okay.
I don't even remotely have a problem with that. I can't even I'm sure that's a hot take for some people, but first of all, it makes logical sense if she's claiming that 6 white men,
Who had
including
badges?
a police
Yeah.
officer, right, have just assaulted her
Mhm.
for days. It would
Yeah,
make
4
sense that
days.
she'd wanna see some sort of solidarity, and the reality is people are tribal. People
That's
are
true.
tribal whether they wanna some people deny it, but everyone's
Mhm.
tribal, and so this is one of the few things that she can say that says, "I want somebody who identifies with me,"
Yeah.
you know? I'm actually more surprised, but who knows at this time, maybe this was very unlikely that there'd be a female officer. I would have expected her to ask for a female officer regardless of race.
Before a
Yeah,
police
before
officer of a different race, I would think
yeah, that's what
female
I
for
would think,
sure.
that
And
tribe.
most departments do have female officers just for things like this,
Yeah,
because victims of sex crimes would feel more comfortable talking to a woman,
yep,
if they wanna open up at all, you know?
yeah. Well, and
So
you've seen it before too, because you reported on some cases where they used female officers even with male perpetrators because
mhm.
it can disarm them sometimes,
Oh,
and
for
they
sure, they
yeah.
do that, yeah.
So you would think there would have been female officers available. So that's the only thing that would surprise me about that, is I would think her tribe in that situation would have been female rather than Black, but
Yeah. Contrary to popular belief, I don't think no women should be police officers. I think they should serve a specific role on the force, and out on the
yeah, I
as a beat cop is not one of those
yeah,
roles that I think
I
they
say
should be
things hyperbolically when I say no
in.
female cops, but
Yeah.
there's definitely a value in having females on the force,
Mhm.
and all that, but I just think, yeah, heading to a call where you're gonna have to subdue somebody, no, that ain't it. That
Yeah.
ain't it.
Absolutely.
So
So, because Wappingers Falls Police Department is a very small town, I mean, you could see it here when you zoom out. This is not a big place here. So it's a very small town.
right, and
They
that's
didn't
modern.
Yeah, that's true too. So it's about 70 miles north of New York City, by the way. And it's funny, when I first heard of this case, I just assumed that it was New York City that it happened in, until I started doing the research for this. I learned that it was actually 70 miles north of New York City. It just
Yeah, I
seems like
didn't know that
something
either. Well,
it's
because the drama was in New York City.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. What we're gonna get
Um,
to.
yeah, exactly.
I'm
So they
gonna
brought
actually look up that population, but go ahead.
Yeah, they brought in a police officer from Poughkeepsie, New York, who was on duty, and this officer spoke to Tawana for about 20 minutes, and I have a short interview with this officer that I'm gonna play now. Let's make sure I'm hitting all the right buttons in the right order, which is unusual for me. And we can't hear it.
Of
Perfect.
Poughkeepsie was asked by the Dutchess County Sheriff Department to question Tawana at St. Francis Hospital, as it was very clear to the Dutchess County Sheriff Department that white police officers invoked fear in Tawana upon seeing them.
Or that they weren't.
Okay. Are you saying they did not have a black member of the Sheriff Department?
I don't know if they do. I didn't have one on duty at that time.
I see. So now you arrived at the hospital approximately what time?
Approximately 4 to 8.
Who was present from the Sheriff Department at that time?
Detectives Brazel and Detective Schmidt.
Okay. Did you observe them attempting to question her when upon your arrival?
No, I didn't.
Okay. What were they doing when you arrived there?
They were in a room across the hall from the treatment room Tawana was in.
Mm-hmm. And who brought you into the room?
Actually, I spoke to both detectives. They informed me of what little information they had gained. Excuse me. And I went across the hall on my own to speak to her.
What did they indicate that she had conveyed to them, or anyone for that matter?
They had no information other than her identity.
I see. And then you subsequently questioned her?
Yes.
Okay, what did she say to you? Or what questions did you address to her?
I attempted to gain information on what had occurred, if she could give a description of her alleged assailants, where it had happened, and any information at all.
So what did she say to you in response to your questions?
She made no verbal statements. All of my responses were gained through nods, head shrugs, batting her eyes. She said one word to me the entire time I spoke to her.
And what was that word?
That word was son.
Son?
When he says batting her eyes, he means they set up like a blink once for yes, twice for no sort of thing. She wasn't like batting her eyes like in
Seductively.
Yeah. The way he said it sounded weird. So I wanted to make sure people knew that's what he meant. She was blinking, once for yes,
Right.
twice for no sort of thing.
Did she repeat that?
No, she said it once.
Okay. Now, I do know in our previous interview with you, you mentioned that she mentioned white cop.
Right, those words she wrote.
Those words she wrote. In response to what question?
Excuse me, I asked her if she had been raped. She nodded yes. I put by whom, at which point her aunt or her mother, one, I can't remember which, suggested I give her a pen and a piece of paper. I did. She wrote the words white cop.
White cop. Okay. Now, let's go back to the question, to the answer son. What question did you, how did she come about giving you the answer son?
In the second part of my interview with her, I asked her if she had heard any conversation between the parties. She nodded yes. And I said, well, who said what? And she very lowly mumbled the word son.
I see.
And I asked her who called who son. She just sort of looked at me.
Okay. Now, while you were questioning her, where were the other officers again?
The detectives were out of the room at that part of the interview. I was in a completely enclosed examination room, just myself and the nurse and Tawana.
Did anyone indicate her response to the representatives from the sheriff department which warranted your coming in to question her?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, did anyone indicate if she had responded in a very or traumatic way or any kind of way?
From what I was told by the detectives, when they attempted to question her, she just sort of backed off from them and stared at him, made no response at all to any of their questions.
I see. Okay, what condition did you observe her to be in yourself?
She appeared to be traumatized. As I put it, she's spacey. She was just staring off, not really paying attention to anything in the room or anything going on around her.
Mm-hmm. During the course of your presence there?
Yes.
Just dazed and...
In her own little world.
Right. Did she ever attempt to hold your hand or to try and convey any messages by way of her hands to you?
Now, when I first arrived after introducing myself, I leaned on the rail of the hospital bed, and she grabbed my hand for a second.
She did?
Yeah.
Was it a tight squeeze or soft?
Fairly soft.
Fairly soft?
It wasn't like shaking hands. It was just, they were dangling over the edge, and she just reached up.
I see. Why do you think she reached up for you?
I have no idea.
No. She discerned that you were a police officer.
Yeah, I was
a
in
black
full
police
uniform.
officer. I see. Mm-hmm. And is there anything else that you observed about her while there?
Just the fact her hair was extremely short and appeared to be ragged, unevenly cut.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now I understand that she did attempt to reach for your badge?
Right. As I leaned over the bed and asked her who had done whatever to her, she reached up and grabbed the badge.
She actually grabbed it?
Yeah.
Huh?
And that's when I can't keep the two apart. Either the mother or the aunt suggested I give her a paper and a pen.
At that point?
Right, and I did, and she wrote the words white cop.
I see. Was it very difficult for her to write the word white cop?
The writing was very scribbled, seemed more like a grade schooler than a teenager.
I see.
And the aunt, I think it was made a point of the fact that she wrote it with her right hand and she's supposedly left-handed.
Yeah, I see. Did you notice whether her eyes were open or closed or
During the time I was speaking to her, she looked straight at me.
straight?
Showed no emotion or no reaction really, but she did just stare at me.
But you could sense that something had occurred to
Yeah,
her.
that was the gut feeling I had.
I see. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's the part that I wanted to get to. Something happened to this girl, and
Yeah.
everybody thought so, uh, and and I would have thought so too. Something had to have happened to her because, um, otherwise she just appeared to be traumatized. Like he said, that was his gut reaction. Now, one of the things that he mentioned in this, which I've come across several times in what I cover on this channel, is he asked her if she had been sexually assaulted. And I find a lot of the times, or not a lot of, I found on more than one occasion. I'm not going to say a lot of the times, but in two that I can think of just off the top of my head, where the suggestion was made to the victim, "Hey, were you raped?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was. Yeah, let's go with that because I was doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing." And
Mhm.
that's a really good excuse of why I was doing that. So that worries me when I hear that question asked, you know?
Yeah, and, like, in a courtroom, you could never ask that type
No.
of question because it'd be leading,
Hmm.
but, investigators are allowed to do that, and
Yeah.
it's dangerous, but here's the thing, like, I don't know, he's just an officer, he wasn't even a detective, right? Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah, he's just like a beat cop or something from
Yeah,
Poughkeepsie, but he's the only black cop that they could find.
right,
So
so you're not talking about somebody who's even trained at all to deal with these
no.
situations,
Yeah.
but that's who she requested was just that description, whatever.
Mhm.
So,
They
yeah,
they found a guy that fit the description
right,
and brought him in.
exactly. But,
Um,
I tell you what, like, and, the more we get into it, the more you'll see why, but
mhm,
it is highly likely that she experienced trauma,
mhm. Oh,
in those 4 days.
for sure. Something happened,
Yeah.
you know. Um,
I'm
so
fielding so much stuff with current breaking news right now. I'm so sorry that I'm
that's okay.
distracted, but I am paying attention.
I almost called it when we were on Frank's show, like, maybe we should, postpone this
Yeah.
for a week, but I'm like, "No, I already announced
Alright.
it."
I think we got a
Yeah,
decent little crowd
yeah, I
for
already
what's
announced.
going on.
Yeah. So, Tawana speaking to this, officer that we just heard from is the last time that she spoke to police at all. And shortly after this, the media got a hold of the story. And what happens when the media gets a hold of a story of a black teenager getting assaulted by 6 white men of some sort of power? Immediately, Al Sharpton's there, was what happened. Fat Al Sharpton, by the
Yes.
way, as we'll see in
Oh,
videos
yeah.
coming up. This is when Al
Chubby
Sharpton
Al.
was a hefty fellow. He looks so different now. By the
I
way,
think he looked better then, to be honest with you. He's
yeah.
got that goofy turtle head where he's got this scrawny little neck, barely holding up that big old head.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my cope. I just look better fat. I'll
It does
keep the weight.
it does sound like you're coping a little bit there. Might be wrong. Um, so not only did Al Sharpton show up, but attorneys Elton H. Maddox and C. Vernon Mason began handling Brawley's publicity, and the case quickly, very quickly became highly controversial. These representatives of Tawana's held many press conferences in the days to follow where they claimed things such as there's a government cover up going on because it was a uh, white on black crime, which we know happens so much that we have to exploit it. It's really an issue. And that's sarcasm, by the way. That's sarcasm.
I gotcha.
The mafia was involved in this somehow. The KKK was involved, and even the Irish Republican Army was involved. Now, I don't know a lot about the Irish Republican Army, but
Yeah.
somehow they wrapped it into where,
There were definitely potatoes.
Yeah.
There were potatoes involved.
yeah, just ridiculous claims. All of these claims obviously were baseless, and I don't remember what video I have queued up, but in my notes I have a video queued up here, so let's go to that. Oh, I think this is just about them getting involved.
Oh yeah, all the hucksters,
Yes.
usual suspects.
But see, for black folks, anything is all right. Bob Abrams is incompetent. He is unqualified. He has never had a criminal case in his life.
The Reverend Al Sharpton is on the verge of accusing Bob Abrams of participating in a cover-up to insulate Steve Pagonis and Scott Patterson, two of Tawana's alleged assailants.
I mean, the hair and the mustache combo
Like
right
a
here.
bulldog.
Yeah.
A black bulldog.
He really did look better back then. You're not lying. He does look much better here than he does these days. Like he looks almost emaciated these days when you see him.
Guys. We have come today because we have asked for the last several weeks for Mr. Abrams to disband the grand jury. He has not done so. We have marched hundreds of people up here. He has still not done so. This grand jury automatically gives immunity to whomever testifies before it, which means that possible suspects could be immunized and sanitized by this grand jury, and when evidence is presented later that they were involved, they are excused just with giving immunity.
Yeah, I wanted to point out the rhyming here because one of his supporters, which I found in my research, was Johnny Cochran. And of course, we all know if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. And I'm wondering if he took some inspiration from Al Sharpton when he came up with that in 1995, I think it was.
I mean, he may have, but that is honestly an old preacher tool. If you listen to all these civil rights leaders and a lot of the black attorneys, the way they speak is the exact same way black preachers speak or some Southern Baptist white preachers speak. With that kind of that rhetoric and and Obama followed that cadence a little bit, but not as much as this. It's very much in the vein of a black preacher.
Yeah, and he is. I mean, he's the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Yeah, they just drop Reverend on anybody they want.
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. I do not revere you, sir.
Yeah.
This has happened in the borough of Queens just last year with Mr. Santucci. The fact now that a tape has been released where Ms. Brawley has identified Mr. Christ as one of her assailants, and Assistant DA Pagonis has said that he is an alibi witness, means that Mr. Pagonis could be called before this grand jury to give an alibi for a dead man and also automatically get immunity for himself. Mr. Pagonis is not the only one we fear. We fear when the Attorney General says he has no suspects. How does he know he is not subpoenaing suspects in front of the grand jury? We are prepared to come in this building and spend the night or go to jail. We are prepared to stay here until the grand jury meets, if it's tomorrow, if it's next week, or we're prepared to be arrested. We do not seek jailing. But there is no legal way to try to stop this grand jury other than civil disobedience, which is why we did not announce a march, but we called out to our community for only those prepared to go to jail to accompany us this morning. We have brought out of New York City over 70 people prepared to go to jail. This is not a march. The march will be April 4th. This is a showdown on the legal criminal justice system. Oh, we shall.
I feel so bad for all of these 70 people that came in who are willing to go to jail and have a record because they're believing what he's saying. They believe him. And back then people didn't know,
and I'm not one to do this, but I give Al Sharpton a little bit of benefit of the doubt right here. We don't know what went on behind the scenes. She obviously went through trauma. Everyone's verifying that this girl has gone through something.
Yeah.
And from and I'm not sure if you covered this in the notes. Maybe you did. I can't remember. I did read them, but he didn't have that much direct contact with her, from what I understand. All of his Sharpton's contact was okay. That's what he's saying.
He says he didn't, and he says that now because he won't. Right. Excuse me. Even to this day, he won't say that Tawana Brawley was lying. He's saying
no. I know that.
He's saying, well, I didn't really talk to Tawana. I didn't ask her anything. I just got the information from her attorneys. These two,
right?
What they're
Mason
and Maddox. Yeah. I
So,
kind of doubt that. It was the three of them. It was always the three of them. So,
but the only point I'm making is, it's while I tend to never believe anything Al Sharpton says because he's a grifter, we're also going way back in time here. We know current Al Sharpton.
Mm-hmm.
We know the Al Sharpton that realized he could profit off this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say if he was that Al Sharpton then.
But
or
even
if he truly thought he was doing something right. You know what I mean?
I think that he does think that he's doing some things right. I watch so many interviews and things like that, and I don't have them pulled. If I was going to play all of the things that I watched preparing for this episode, we'd be here for 12 hours.
Right.
But one of the things that he said, current day Skinny Al said, is that even if you think I was wrong on some things, you have to believe that at the time I said it, I thought I was right. And I really do think that he thought he was right.
Yeah, I know it's easy to dunk on the man, but that's where I am too. I think he thought he was doing the right thing here. But the problem with stuff like this, and this happens in all of these like political or race movements or things like this, is the leader, granted, he's making himself vulnerable, but he's going to get bailed out.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some power. All these other 70 people have no power.
That's what I mean.
Easily be forgotten, and nobody cares to help them get out. Maybe they lose their job because of it. Who knows what's going on in their life? But you know what kind of drama can come with just an arrest.
Oh, absolutely. People will lose their jobs.
Yep. Lose custody of your children. There's all kinds of things that can happen.
Exactly.
And they expose themselves to that. But to double down on the preacher thing, you see they're over here singing, hymns. And it's like, it's always the way. They got to invoke some sort of morality there. They cloak themselves in morality by parading as if it's a church service. They're mimicking a church service.
Yeah.
And that's the same feeling these people are having, is this emotional feeling they would have if they were at church.
Yeah. I'm going to play a little bit more of this just because he says, before any of these people even get arrested, he says that, hey, you're going to get arrested. And they stay for it. And it just breaks my heart because these are family people, you know.
Well, I mean, they were definitely true believers.
Yeah. And in their defense, the information hasn't come out yet. But I do want to also point out that they were asking for a grand jury investigation. And then once they got a grand jury investigation going, they're like, no. This protest that we're about to watch right now is that they don't want the grand jury investigation to go through because they didn't get the right person to be in charge of the grand jury investigation.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's silly. They're going back and forth.
Yeah.
For those of you who just arrived, we want to tell you who we are. We are people. I want you to look at my hair. It's white. I started with Martin Luther King 27 years ago. And I was in a march like coming across that bridge, and I ain't tired yet. Those of us who are up here are ready to go to jail. I want the police to know, the governor to know, and the state to know that we are on state property. This is, and I'm a preacher, and we have a word called claiming. We're claiming this property for Tawana Brawley. We're claiming our right to be here. And we're here today to say that we're fighting against racism, against rape, and we're ready. And these are women. I want to say this. All these sisters behind me are ready to go to jail. Fighting for justice. And fighting for justice. Those outside too, we pray are with us, and you can tell by their signs that they are. But these sisters here are not talking the talk, they are walking the walk. And they are ready to go to jail. Now, we're going to stay here overnight.
I feel like he's going to try to sell me a timeshare right now.
Yeah.
You know?
When they scanned past Sharpton right there, he looks so much like a black boss hog. He had his jacket back and his gut just poking out. Can you see it?
Rewind it a little bit. Yeah, he does.
I was like, oh,
By their
them
signs
Duke
that
boys
they
are
are.
at it
But
again.
these sisters here are not talking the talk, they are walking the walk.
Right there.
And they are ready to go to jail. Now, we're going to stay here overnight if necessary.
And just in case anybody following this is wondering, this whole claim it being a theological term, that's garbage theology.
What is he talking about?
So he's literally
I'm
talking about,
Catholic. I don't know what he's talking about.
So he's talking about the name it and claim it movement, this prosperity gospel. It's that God, all of the TV preachers who are millionaires plus all use this same garbage theology where, you know, as if God has promised you health and wealth if you're faithful to him. And so if you're not healthy and wealthy, it's because you're not claiming it hard enough, your faith's not strong enough, and you're not giving enough money to me. And it's a very profitable way to the Joel Osteens of the world, you know, Kenneth Copeland, all these people. And a lot of the black churches are like this too, even on the small scale. And if somebody's not feeling well, if somebody's not, it's because you don't have enough faith and you're not, are you tithing? You must not be tithing. You know, that's that whole claim it thing. And so that's what he's saying here. Oh, we claim this for Brana. It's like Tawana Brawley. I got her name mixed up. We claim this for Tawana. So yeah, it's a whole bunch of bunk. All right.
By us in the morning, they're gonna know that we've been.
But what they're doing right here, I keep pausing. We're never going to get through this episode, but I keep pausing it because I want to let you guys know what they're doing. They're staying out there all night so they can intimidate the grand jurors as they walk into the courtroom the next day. That's their plan right now, to intimidate jurors.
Which is not, that's not civil disobedience. That's a literal crime.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why this fence is here to say, stay out. We came over. Now we are on state property and we are claiming it for Tawana Brawley and against the injustice of the system. That's right. And we're ready to go down to jail. That's right. Just like I did 27 years ago in Albany, Georgia. I'm ready to go to jail right here in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Reverend, what's your name?
My name is Reverend Timothy Mitchell. I'm up here. I'm up here.
That was all about optics. That's what that was about.
That guy was picketing and parading on government property, if you ask me.
I think they all were. I hear that's against the law. I think that's a federal crime.
I hear that's a federal crime. Yeah.
No more parading.
Nope.
So Tawana's representatives claimed that a police officer
Buford T. Justice. Exactly. Sorry, the chat. It's like, this dude is such a clown. All right.
A great chat, by the
You
way.
do.
I love all you guys. Thanks for being here on a different day. By the way, I'll be here tomorrow as well, but on a different day. I'm so glad that so many of you are here to, talk about this case with us because it is Saturday and not Sunday right now. All right, so Tawana's representatives claimed that a police officer named Harry Christ, which I think they mentioned when they were preaching just now, Harry Christ Jr., who was in the newspaper because he had committed suicide shortly after Tawana was found, was one of the 6 men who assaulted her.
I think it was the day after, from what I was reading on it.
Yeah.
It was actually the day after he committed suicide, which made it highly suspicious and highly convenient for them.
It did. Luckily, we did have that grand jury investigation go through where we we dug into that a little bit, and we'll get to the results of that in a minute. But they also accused Stephen Pagonis, an assistant district attorney in Dutchess County, New York, of being, establishing an alibi for Chris, stating that he had been with Chris during that period of time, which they had gone shopping together for their then girlfriends. I think one of them was married and one of them had a fiance or a girlfriend, and they went shopping together because it was after it was like a couple of days after Thanksgiving, so they were going Christmas shopping together.
Gotcha.
The grand jury investigation. Okay, so the grand jury investigation into the Tawana Brawley case did continue, and on October 6, 1988, the grand jury released its 170-page report that had concluded that Brawley had not been abducted, assaulted, raped, or sodomized, as the Brawley and her advisors said. So during this grand jury investigation, they heard from 180 different witnesses. They saw 250 exhibits. So that this was thorough, is my point. They didn't just like brush over this. It was a thorough investigation.
They knew it had to be. They knew it had to
Exactly.
be. And that's the thing. Every time one of these cases happens where there's racial tension, they go above and beyond, which is why when they do come down on the side of it not being what the people are claiming, it's like you really can believe it, you know, because they know the consequences.
Exactly.
So
I'm going to get into some of the things, and obviously I'm not going to go through the whole 170-page report, but the important
I
stuff.
thought we were going to have a detailed show.
No,
You're not
at
going to
all.
read it?
Okay, I'm not going to read 170.
It's your show.
I'm going to go over the important stuff. The things that directly refute Tawana's evidence is what we're going to go over. So one of the things that they found when they found Tawana is that there was cuts on her shoes. They found that the cuts in her shoes were made while the shoe was not on her foot. So, you know, she took her shoe off, or somebody took her shoe off and then cut it and then put it back on her foot, because the way the cuts were, her foot would have been cut and her foot was not cut at all. The burn on her jeans that we had mentioned, the jeans were off of her body when this happened. She had no burn marks at all on her. So now it's getting a little fishy, but still, you never know. It was 4 days. We don't know what happened.
Right.
There was no evidence of any sexual assault or sodomy. And they did although in some of these press conferences that they did, they said, oh, they didn't even check to see if she was sexually. That's baloney. They did a rape kit right away while she was in the hospital.
Of course they did. Yeah.
So there was no evidence of any sexual assaults taking place. They found evidence that Tawana had written the racial slurs on herself and then smeared feces over the top of them. And the way they came to this conclusion is that the slurs were written in ashes from burnt cotton, and the same burnt cotton was found underneath her fingernails, along with the dog excrement that was on her. Tawana had carpet fibers. This is where I started thinking, because I'm like, oh, well, what if she scratched herself and they had put it on her, and then that could have, maybe something. But there was carpet fibers on her that matched the carpet of her previous apartment. Tawana and her family had just moved, and the apartment that they moved from was the apartment complex that she was found at, on the green of this apartment complex in this small town in New York. And the apartment that she moved from was apartment 19A. And on her clothing and on her body, there was carpet fibers that matched the carpet of that apartment, which we found out from property management, which must have been one of those, what did I say? How many people? 180 people that they were witnesses, was vacant and left unlocked, which is not good property management. I should know. You need to lock stuff up. Yeah. The burnt denim, the seam from her jeans, the burnt seam from her jeans was found inside the apartment with other burnt cotton materials inside apartment 19A. Here's the big one. The woman who called 911 said that she witnessed Tawana crawling into the trash bag that she was found in before lying still on the green between the apartment buildings. The original 911 call was to report a homeless woman. So this woman called 911 and said, "Hey, there's a homeless woman sleeping on the grass out back of my apartment."
Right.
And when the police got there, they found Tawana Brawley in a trash bag with the racial slurs and the whole 9 yards. So that's what the grand jury found. Any comments before we play the next?
No, I'll make comments on the video.
Okay. I do the same thing.
I've tried to limit my interruptions too.
All right. This is the head of the guy who ran the grand jury investigation. And we're not going to play. We're going to play about 6 minutes of this. So let me know if you want me to stop it.
Now, Eyewitness News.
Tawana Brawley was not the victim of a forcible sexual assault by multiple assailants over a 4-day period. There's no evidence that any sexual assault occurred.
New York Attorney General Robert Abrams, for the first time and officially, calls the Tawana Brawley story a lie and closes the investigation that has commanded headlines filled with charges of racism. And perhaps most importantly, finally answers the haunting question of whether a gang of white men kidnapped and raped the then 15-year-old girl.
Keep in mind, when this comes out, this grand jury investigation, it had been months of Al Sharpton and Maddox, and I keep forgetting the dude's name, the two lawyers doing press. That's not right.
Mason.
It was Mason, yeah, Maddox and Mason and Al Sharpton going in front of the news every chance that they got to say that 6 white men in power and the Irish Republican Army and the KKK and all of these people were involved in a cover-up, a high-up governmental cover-up, because they didn't care about Black people. That's not true at all. Like it just didn't. Not only did what she was saying happen, but I think the people that she named, she wouldn't have named those people. Like when she said, "Oh, it's that officer who killed himself." I think that those 3 put that in her head, probably the lawyers more so than Al Sharpton. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But, oh, this is a great scapegoat. This officer just killed himself. And he wasn't even an officer in that town. He was like from a couple of towns over. So,
yeah. But that's the thing, just like you were saying during the interview portion, is all they would have to do is ask this girl, was this the guy? Was this one of the guys? Show her a picture. Show, you know what I mean? And like,
yeah,
I'll just shake her head, blink apparently, and it's one of the guys.
Exactly. And they're also the people who prevented her from speaking to the police after that one initial, can you call it an interview, since she didn't really speak,
really wasn't.
But yeah, from that initial contact with the police, she didn't talk to the police at all after that. And if you want people caught, why would you not be telling them everything you know about what happened? They didn't even know where this happened. They knew it was in the woods somewhere. That was another thing that came out, and maybe it's in this video, but she didn't have any. This was in November. She didn't, in New York in November, and she was allegedly kept in the woods for 4 days. She had no frostbite, no, people die in the woods for 4 days.
Right. Yeah. No signs
in November.
of exposure or any of that.
Yeah. Exposure. That's the word I was looking for. All right. I'll get back to the video. Sorry. I'm gonna pause it. Let me know if you want to pause it.
It's all good.
Good evening. I'm John Johnson. Bill Butell is on assignment. John Mahler is here. Here are the developments in the Tawana Brawley case in brief. The grand jury report says there's no evidence to...
I bet whoever's on assignment was a white guy.
Probably.
And they brought in a guy as a token
to
cover this story. I'm just, that's how that went down. All right. And I don't blame them.
I found it interesting, the reporter voices that they had back then. They all have the same reporter voice. Yeah. It's very odd.
And especially in the 80s and 90s, and I feel like it went out of style in the 90s. Certain jobs had certain voices.
Yeah.
And you just had to have that voice if you're in that.
You still hear it every now and again, but it's it's very strong reporter voice in these news briefs we're watching.
Yeah. What's his face?
support-
Shane Gillis has a great comedy about when they got rid of the sports announcer voice. When the guys talk like this, and our boy's up to bat. Nobody can hit off this guy, blah, blah, blah. And then Jackie Robinson hits a home run off their white pitcher and it ends their voice. They're like, holy crap. But anyway.
The story that Tawana was abducted and raped last November. New York Attorney General Robert Abrams says that point by point the story is not true and that the Brawley advisors have jeopardized the rights of future victims of racial assaults. Tawana Brawley and her family have not been heard from and no one is certain where she is. Reverend Al Sharpton and other advisors have reacted strongly to Abrams, attacking him as a racist and not caring about black victims. There is other reaction on the grand jury report, and we'll have those stories in just a minute. But first, Tim Minton has been covering the Brawley story for all these months. Tim was at the courthouse today in Poughkeepsie and when the grand jury report was released, and at the news conference held by State Attorney General Robert Abrams supporting the grand jury finding that the Tawana Brawley story is a lie. Tim is here now with his report. Tim.
John, it's not just my report. Of course, it's the grand jury's report. And when you read this report, it's hard to get past one page. That's the page where jurors proved that Tawana Brawley wrote racial slurs on herself and then smeared feces over the slurs. It's at the guts of Tawana's story. For months, her advisors have ridiculed anybody silly enough to suggest the filth found on Tawana was self-inflicted. Now, the jurors who spent months listening to all the evidence say just that and more. The Brawley report is tough, detailed, and blunt. On the key question of whether Tawana was raped, the grand jury says no. There was no medical or forensic evidence that a sexual assault was committed on Tawana Brawley.
If a 15-year-old girl had been forcibly raped or sodomized by multiple assailants over a 4-day period, there is a high probability that medical or forensic evidence would have been found.
What about that gang of white men, the alleged attackers? The grand jury says no. No gang, no men. And jurors point out Tawana Brawley never provided a detailed account of her allegations or named her alleged assailants to anyone. As for the kidnap story, the report says no. It says the teenager actually stayed in a place she knew well. Jurors found Tawana Brawley had significant contact with her former apartment at some time during her 4-day disappearance.
Carpet fibers consistent with those from apartment 19A were found on the jeans, on the blouse, and the shoe Miss Brawley was wearing when discovered on November 28th. A burnt seam of denim and other charred cotton materials were scattered on the living room floor. The jeans Miss Brawley was wearing were burned and had pieces missing, and there were pieces of charred cotton found with the bag in which Miss Brawley was discovered.
Then there's the question. The Brawley say it's the only...
It sounds like she didn't even clean up the apartment after she had been there for 4 days.
Yeah, no, she wasn't masterminding a actual thing here.
Did she think they weren't going to check that? Like, she was found in the apartment complex where she used to live.
Right. She's 15.
And
15-year-olds are dumb. And I think that's why she went to such extremes with the burning of the jeans and the cutting of the shoe and the racial. I think she thought the racial slurs were going to do it. But weren't they upside down? Weren't they like facing her? She didn't even write them the correct way, like somebody would have written them on her.
No, they were correct.
They were correct?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Okay. Yeah. Well, somebody said they were upside down, but that's fine. So, like all this stuff, it's like she's gone to such extremes that it's like you're thinking there's no way somebody will question this,
Well, and I don't think she was worried about police questioning it. I think that she was worried about her stepfather questioning it. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too, but yeah, we'll talk.
All right.
Only question of cover-up by officials. But the grand jury found no cover-up. The report says there is no evidence that a cover-up occurred or was attempted in this case.
Significant numbers of personnel were assigned to the investigation by the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office, as well as the Dutchess County District Attorney's Office. The Federal Bureau of Investigation was contacted by the Sheriff's Office while Tawana Brawley was still in St. Francis Hospital. The FBI was contacted based on the racial epithets on her body, even before she indicated that a white cop, quotes, was involved. All of the key evidence in the case was sent to the FBI laboratory in Washington, D.C.
But as to whether there was a cover-up by the Brawleys, the grand jury says yes.
It was alleged and indicated that Tawana Brawley was abducted, sexually abused, raped, sodomized over a 4-day period by 3 to 6 men, one of whom was a police officer. Those allegations are untrue. The people who made those allegations lied.
The Brawley report also deals with the people accused by Tawana's family and advisors. Was Stephen Pagonis involved? Jurors say no. He had no connection with any incident involving Tawana Brawley during those 4 days. And about Fishkill officer Harry Chris Jr., who died shortly after Tawana was found, the report says no involvement. The death of Harry Chris Jr. was a suicide completely unrelated to Tawana Brawley. It took almost an hour for the special prosecutor.
I was just going to say probably the same thing that you're going to say. Imagine his family.
Yeah, can you? Well, I was saying kind of the opposite. Can you imagine how cold-hearted you have to be to put his family through that?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you're already dealing with your son committed or brother or whatever committed suicide, and now you're gonna drag them through
for months.
This too, for months. That he's. I mean, and to your knowledge, it could be forever. That they could forever have the memory of their son be he committed suicide because he committed a rape.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
That's evil. That's evil.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think that they knew that guy didn't have anything to do with it from the start. It was just a convenient scapegoat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Al knew that too.
I think so. Yep.
Prosecutor to read the evidence, testimony, and conclusions of the grand jury. In the end, Robert Abrams said his greatest fear is for the next young girl, white or black, the real victim.
If a young woman were to walk into a police station, not only in New York, anywhere in this country, and make an accusation about being raped, or if a minority person were to make an accusation to law enforcement saying that they were preyed upon on the basis of race, and their allegation was not taken in the most serious way and investigated with the utmost degree of commitment, then that would be the most horrendous possible outcome of this kind of case.
But to protect against future hoaxes, the grand jury, in addition to its conclusion on the facts of the case, is also proposing several changes in state law designed to help law enforcement officials deal with future claims of rape and other crimes. But you can write to this address.
All right. So after this happens, what do you, I know you've read the notes, but what do you think that like all of this evidence comes out, it's all public now. What do you think that her team of 3 come out with?
Yeah, well,
if you had to guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Right now, there's a whole lot of people, and I've been one of them, that is really disappointed with the fact that the only political move people have now is the double down. Like there's literally, there's no humility. There's no just, hey, we were wrong.
Yeah.
It's always a double down, triple down. And but that's not new. That's not new.
No,
That's been the play for a long time.
And like that dude was saying, like, what does this do to the person who's actually a victim of a hate crime or actually a victim of sexual violence? What does that do to their stories? It diminishes them so much. People don't believe them anymore.
Yeah.
It's just so bad for society in general.
Speaking of which, speaking of things that are not new, that's another thing people have been trying to say, oh, you have to, like, this is some new idea that if somebody accuses somebody of something and it's a false report and you can prove it, then they should be tried and convicted and sentenced to the same punishment that who they accused right would have gotten. That's a biblical principle. It's like almost 2,000 or 2,500 years old at this point. That's the way, because that's fair. That's fair. Now, this case is a little bit different. I wouldn't necessarily support that in this case because you're talking about a 15-year-old girl, a 15-year-old girl with some extenuating circumstances.
But these three sitting here on our screen right now are not 15.
No.
And they're just as guilty.
Yeah.
So well, let's hear what they had to say after this grand jury investigation results were publicized.
Systemically prejudiced against blacks.
What should we expect from 21 whites from Dutchess County coming up with some conclusions when even John Santucci has made the comment about the New York City grand juries that people tend to vote their racial prejudices. So whatever they've come up with is what they've come up with. It is clear they never intended to arrest and prosecute those people who did this to Tawana Brawley.
When the three advisors were informed by...
You have to believe that every single white person in this country is a racist to believe that somebody would see evidence of a horrible crime that was described in the beginning of this episode and say, nah, we're just going to look the other way.
Yeah.
People wouldn't, even racists wouldn't do that. Like, it was a 15-year-old girl, for goodness sake.
A 15-year-old girl reporting that 6 men sodomized and raped her over 4 days. I mean, there is no one. There is no one.
No, absolutely.
I don't care. I mean, a absolute legitimately racist person filled with hatred.
Yeah.
Could not keep a straight face and support something like that. There's no way.
Maybe the Irish Republican Army could. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, it's just crazy because, I don't want to. I almost said some inflammatory things, but let's just leave it at that.
We'll press play.
We'll leave it at that. Yeah.
By reporters that Attorney General Abrams is asking the State Judicial Discipline Committee to investigate and discipline Mason and Alton Maddox for 10 months of deception. Maddox began calling Abrams names.
He is a mental midget. He's an absolute judicial punk. And he can.
By the way, I'm going to be using that insult, mental midget, from now on. I'm
copy pasta that one. That one's good.
Yeah.
A judicial punk.
Alton Maddox for 10 months of deception.
No
Maddox began calling Abrams names.
He is a mental midget. He's an absolute judicial punk. And he cannot face up to real men. And
although Abrams did not formally recommend action against the third advisor, he did say Reverend Al Sharpton is under investigation by his office and possibly that of U.S. Attorney Rudolph Giuliani.
I don't think that anyone in their right mind can believe a girl plucked hair out of her head, covered herself with excrement, and did all these things because she was afraid of getting a beating. That just doesn't make any sense.
Late this afternoon, Giuliani commented.
All right, so we don't have to hear what Giuliani has to say about it, but
no.
What?
Go ahead.
What Al said right there. I was going to move along. So did you have something?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's insane. That first of all, her hair wasn't plucked out of her head. Her hair was cut.
Yeah,
it was cut. That's nothing.
There was no actual physical harm to her at all. Her feet were not cut. Her shoes were cut. There was no burns on her.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I couldn't find anything, and I was curious if you found anything where it showed her being abused at all. Because that okay,
none.
Yeah.
That I found
any assault. Yeah, because they specifically addressed that the fecal matter and the burnt jeans and that there was no sexual assault and all, like that all these things were hoaxes, but I never saw anything like supporting or not supporting whether there was any physical abuse that went on.
Just that she appeared to be unconscious when they found her and through the hospital ride and was out of it at the hospital. That's the only, I guess, medical things wrong with her at the time, but that I would assume is very easily faked, to act out of it or unconscious. I'm not sure,
Well, the mind's really powerful too.
One of the things I did see that may have been more difficult to fake is on the ambulance ride, they tried different stimuli to bring her to, and it didn't work. Like, they pinched her or whatever they do to wake somebody up. So maybe, I'm not sure. maybe she was maybe she hadn't slept or something. I don't know what was going on there.
Well, I
But
mean, something's 4 days
Mhm.
is a long period of time to be holed up in some room somewhere. Well, who knows what else she was doing during
Yeah,
the 4 days. It's not necessarily that she was in that room for 4 days.
that's true.
So, but it's a small town for you to be hiding from being seen by somebody for 4 days.
Well, I don't know because I don't think that when her family moved away from that town, I'm not sure that back then there would have even been a missing persons report in that town.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will say that's one of the big things, and I'm sure you've seen it many times when you're looking at these older, your overruled cases, because
Mhm.
the progress through communication with the internet has
Yeah.
changed how people fight crime. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's a ton of comedians that have done bits about this, but it's like being a bank robber in the 60s is like not even worth bragging about. Like, of course you
Yeah.
got away with it. You'd have to be an idiot not to get away with it.
Yeah.
But now you can't get away with nothing.
Well, I covered Amber Hagerman, where we get the Amber Alert from, and also Adam Walsh's case,
Yep.
where
Yeah, I
the
watched that
Code
one.
Adam comes from. So all of these, when a kid goes missing, at least around where I live, immediately on Facebook, the local police department is putting their picture out. Even we get the silver alerts. We have a lot of elderly people in our area that wander off sometimes, and we get
Yeah.
alerts immediately within hours of it happening, and the Amber Alerts on the highway, and push through to your phones. By the way, if you turn off your Amber Alerts on your phone, you're kind of a jerk, so you should turn those back on. Um, just saying, there's the kids need you. And you never know if you're going to be in the right place at the right time for that sort of stuff. But this is 1987, that those sort of things were just not in play back then.
So what's crazy? So I was looking it up because the NCIC is the national database that
Mhm.
that allows law enforcement agencies to communicate across state lines.
Yeah.
And I was looking it up because I thought it was really new, but I guess it was created in 67. But I'm sure it would have been limited, because especially to small police forces, because they wouldn't have even had internet available at that time.
That's true. Yeah.
In the 80s. I mean, big cities might have had some sort of version of the internet to speak with the government, but not tiny ones.
I would think even like New York City or Chicago or somewhere like that maybe had databases between the different precincts, but not out further than the city limits or the state limits,
Yeah, let me look up real quick.
I know internet, like the first email was sent in like 1985 or something like that, but that doesn't mean people were using it that quickly.
Well, no, the government did have access to it before the population did. Long
But
before.
the government, meaning the feds, not a local police department.
No, not whatever.
Yeah.
No, I can't remember it.
Wappinger.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yep.
So the big question that I asked myself when looking at this case is, why would Tawana lie? And I dug into it a little bit. And what I found was, at the time that Tawana went missing, for 4 days, she was grounded because she had stayed out at a party the week before until 5 a.m. She didn't come home till 5 a.m. And apparently she took a pretty good beating from her stepfather, Ralph King, because of that. And he was known, there was neighbors that said they heard the beatings happening anytime she would misbehave. There was even a time where Tawana was picked up for shoplifting, normal 15-year-old stuff, by the way. So she's picked up for shoplifting, and Ralph King attempted to beat her at the police station, and the police had to stop him from beating her in front of them. So she was, I think, abused by this stepfather. Witnesses also said that they previously, and this is all in that 170-page report, by the way. Witnesses also say that they had previously heard Ralph King talk about Tawana in a sexual manner, which is creepy. To have your stepfather talking to you about your 15-year-old stepchild in a sexual manner. He had a history of violence, Ralph King did. He stabbed his first wife 14 times before shooting and killing her. I'm not sure why he was out of jail and remarried.
I think he got like 12 years. He did
Yeah.
12 years in prison for premeditated murder.
Yeah, that's what happened.
What?
I think we need to be tougher on crime. I thought we were back then too, but apparently I was mistaken.
Yeah. And I mean, I would venture to say all of this doesn't happen if Ralph King does the proper amount of time or experiences the proper punishment for that first crime.
Absolutely. And it seems so odd to me that because we know now, and at the time they didn't know any of this because they didn't know who Tawana Brawley was at the time, but it seems very odd to me that she or her family asked for a black male to speak to when her actual abuser was a black male.
Yeah.
I think her family probably helped mold the story as well. Her mom definitely has been accused of that by witnesses.
Yeah.
So I think she was a victim, but not of 6 white men. She was a victim of her stepfather. She was also a victim of Al Sharpton and Maddox and Mason, because I think when she did make up this lie, she didn't plan it to go where they took it. She planned it to get out of being in trouble with her stepfather.
So this is complete speculation. So we know that already.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts about this? Like, do you think she came home and he beat her and she ran away, or she ran away and they figured it out and so they came up with I don't know. What happened in that 4 days?
I personally think that she went to go visit her boyfriend. She stopped at the boyfriend's mom's house and hung out with the boyfriend's mom for a while. And it said she didn't get off the bus until like 8:30 at night. Well, if she was supposed to be at school, she was already late and they would have found out she skipped school. So I think at that point she thought, well, I'm already in trouble. I might as well go, do whatever, hang out with my friends, whatever. She's supposed to be grounded, so she's not supposed to be going anywhere but school and home, I would assume. At least that was the rules when I was grounded as a teenager. And I think she was probably hanging out with other people during those 4 days. And I think after she concocts the story to not get in trouble with her stepdad or her mom or whatever, her mom finds out that it's concocted and gets into the 6 white men and the sexual assault and the, that
tries to make it grandiose.
Yeah. And didn't put a stop to the Sharpton and Maddox and Mason coming in and blowing it way out of proportion.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, on one hand, that you can clearly answer Al Sharpton's question.
Mm-hmm.
I can absolutely think of a reason why a girl would do that.
Oh, yeah.
She's scared of her abusive stepfather who murdered his first wife.
And I'm sure she knows that happened too.
Of course.
Yeah.
At 15, she's not 10.
Yeah.
She's 15.
Yeah.
She's aware of what's going on. And so, I mean, likely, we're assuming still, but come on. And I'm addressing a little bit of what happened in the chat. Number 2 is talking about her dad beat the tar out of her brother at the police station. And to be fair, my father, if he picked me up from the police station for shoplifting, they probably would have had to pull him off of me too.
Yeah.
So
same.
that's not actually evidence.
Also, number 2's dad was a cop, so they all knew him. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad was a former cop, but
yeah.
So that's all that stuff's kind of like, some people go too far with their discipline, especially in public.
And
we've
especially
talked about
in the
that
80s.
before. Yeah, we've talked about it before. Like some of the worst abuse people experience is when their parents are embarrassed by their behavior,
Mhm.
and then their parents lash out from embarrassment, which at that point it's not discipline anymore. It's just you're embarrassed, and so you're lashing out, and so that sucks. But this guy is a violent, murderous dude. We're not talking about he spanks a few too many swats or something.
Mhm.
Like, no, this dude is absolutely to be feared. And so we said she knew that. How does Al Sharpton not know that? They have to know.
Yeah.
the
Oh,
family.
I'm sure they did. Maybe not initially, because they came in pretty quick after this
Sure,
happened.
but it lasted months. There's
Yeah.
people in those offices that are going to do their due diligence and find out who they're
Absolutely.
dealing with. So they all had to have at least gotten a scent of what they were dealing with at some point.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
And especially after the grand jury investigation document dropped.
Yeah, the double down is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So
Yeah.
after all of this happens, Mason and Maddox, they were attorneys, obviously. I think I said that, but they were disbarred. And I mean, we all know what Al Sharpton has been up to since then. Basically the same thing over and over. Every time there's something that he can exploit, he does. So in 1988, Stephen Pagonis, who we heard about during this episode, sued Mason, Maddox, and Sharpton for defamation, as he should, and was awarded $345,000 in 1988 money, which I'm not sure how much that is now, but probably way more. I mean, obviously way more. Al Sharpton's portion of that 345 was paid by his supporters, including a big chunk of it by Johnny Cochran in 2001. So
it's more corrupt preacher mentality.
He got off scot-free.
Yeah, they operate like corrupt preachers.
Yeah,
that's what they do.
Mason and Maddox both paid their parts in 2012. I don't know if they had support. Probably it didn't say it in the documents that I read, but they did end up paying as well. He also sued Tawana Brawley herself. Now, keep in mind she was a teenager at the time, but she did, and she probably could have got out of this because she was a teenager, but she didn't show up for the trial. And
default judgment,
and was
every
ordered
time
to pay Pagonis $185,000. If I was on that trial, I may not have made her pay anything because she was 15 at the time. You know?
But you know what? Here's the thing, and I don't even know that you have the power to do this because the courts are complicated. The civil courts are complicated. I know more about criminal courts, but I know I read quite a bit about Pagonis, and you know, he had small children at the time. And he had to sit his children down and explain to them that, you know, these allegations are being made, and, you know, we're going through, and it's like just the fact that he had to do that is crazy, and he obviously was owed something for that. It's just nuts.
That conversation alone is worth $345,000.
Yes, and the fact that there was a chance he goes to prison. They didn't care if he went to prison for the rest of his life.
They didn't care if he ever got a job again for the rest of his life.
Yeah. No, they tried to ruin him, and they didn't care. So, and honestly, because he was white.
Exactly.
And that's the reality. Because he was a white person who had authority. They didn't care how they ruined his life.
And he happened to be friends with a dude who killed himself. Keep in mind that's
the only reason he got roped into it. Yeah.
He got roped into it because his friend. So not only is he going through all of this, but he's grieving the loss of his friend who he was good enough friends with to go shopping for their spouses together for Christmas gifts, you know?
Yep. No, it's crazy. Yeah. And the other thing is, and you can get it, we're going to get into where she is now or whatever, but he's even said that he would forego, and this is what I was saying, I don't know how the civil courts work, but if I was on that jury and he said in court, like, I don't even care about the money, I just want her to recant her story and admit that I did not do anything to her.
Yeah.
And now, how believable that is to other people, if it's like you either have to pay $185,000 or apologize, the apology may not be that valuable, you know, at that point.
True.
But that's all he cares about. Like,
I don't think we'll ever know where she was for 4 days.
No,
especially while her parents are still alive. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She's the only one that can do that, and she has no motivation to do so.
Yeah, why would she at this point?
Yeah.
So she hasn't paid, and like you were saying, where is she now? I know where she is now, or at least I know where she was in 2012 because.
Did you see that I added to your?
Oh,
document?
I didn't.
Okay, there's one more after.
Oh, I have my hard copy pulled up. Oh no. Okay. So
It's okay.
hold on.
I'll pull it up. Go ahead. Do yours.
Okay.
It's fine.
I didn't pull the one from the Google Drive.
Yeah, you're all right. Do the one you looked at. Yeah.
So 25 years, this was written in 2012, by the way. 25 years after her rape claims sparked a firestorm, Tawana Brawley avoids the spotlight. I'm going to read this article. Stop me if you need to say anything. Her silence is deafening. 25 years after the spotlight first glared on Tawana Brawley, a Black woman who as a teen claimed she was raped by a gang of white men smeared with feces and stuffed into a garbage bag. She's desperately struggling to stay hidden from public view. I don't want anyone to know about that, Brawley, age 40, in 2012, said recently after the Post found her in Hopewell, Virginia, where she lives in a neatly kept brick apartment complex with signs warning of video surveillance, which would have been good to have at that apartment back in 1988.
Right. Yeah.
By all appearances, her life, so chaotic a quarter century ago, now seems normal. Brawley using aliases such as, I'm not going to say her aliases. You guys can find them. Like, she wants to be left alone. She was a victim, by the way. I'm not saying that she wasn't. She just wasn't a victim of what she claimed she was. Now has a daughter, a neighbor says, and works as a licensed practical nurse at the Laurels of Bonaire and Richmond. This was in 2012. She probably still doesn't work there. Her coworkers.
I think she's in North Carolina now.
Oh, you have.
I did a little research.
Okay.
It doesn't matter though. So, because we're not going to give her alias anyway, but yeah.
Okay. Where was that? Okay.
Sorry.
Her coworkers were clueless about her past. Are you serious? We don't know her by that name. Isn't that a trip? Squealed one staffer who called Brawley, known to staff as a different name, a good worker.
So what a crazy response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would that be your response?
Are you serious? Might be one of my responses.
Ain't that a trip? Ain't that a trip? That is such
probably not.
That is such a flippant response to, oh, she accused 6 guys of rape and sodomy. Oh,
well, I don't know. Like, what if this person wasn't familiar with the case? I mean, it was 25 years ago in a different state.
Yeah, maybe that's possible. But I was just like, I'm reading "Ain't That a Trip," and it just sounds so like, oh, no way, that's just crazy, girl.
Yeah. On a recent Friday, Brawley, noticeably heavier and dressed in pink scrubs, emerged from her apartment around 6:30 a.m. with a small child and a man wearing red hospital scrubs. The two left in separate cars, Brawley in a Chrysler Sebring and the man in a Ford Taurus. She arrived at work in Richmond about 30 minutes later. The man pulled in minutes afterwards. So it sounds like they worked at the same place but drove separately there. That's kind of odd. I mean, maybe one of them took the kid to daycare.
Work. Yeah, there's that, and then there's shift work. So sometimes, people are on 10s and people are on 12s and people are on 8s or whatever. So
possible.
You never know if it's a hospital.
It's an old people home.
Okay. Yeah, so it depends on what their job is. You never know.
Yeah, true. Hopewell, where Brawley has lived for the last year, according to a neighbor, has the highest rate of violent crime per capita of any city or town in Virginia.
Just nuts.
Is an interesting fact.
Yeah.
Local cops say it's plagued by drugs and guns, and it had 5 murders in the last 3 weeks.
I mean,
jittery residents call police at even the slightest suspicion. Okay, let's move on to I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just wanted you guys to know we found her.
One murder in my county in like the last 5 years. It's like,
I haven't looked up the crime stats around here lately.
Yeah.
Maybe I should.
And it was done by a homeless person.
Oh.
Yeah, it's one of the craziest things that's happened since COVID, because so many people have moved to Florida. I'm in Florida.
Yeah.
So many people have moved to Florida that we've had big influx of homeless population, and it's not been good. But anyway, yeah. So here, I don't know on Restream if I can do this or not, but I could try.
Or just drop it in the chat, and I can.
Here it is.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yeah. Does that work?
Hold on. I don't. No, I don't know.
No. Let me try one more time.
Hold on. I got it. I had to click a button. Oh, you took it away before I could click the button.
Hold on. Share. There it is.
All right. Very good. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. So this is real short. I'm not going to read the whole article, but it says pay up time for Brawley, 87 rape hoaxer finally shells out for slander. Still looking fantastic here. So, I mean, she just looks like a normal nurse or TSA agent or, whatever else you would expect to see.
Yeah.
But this says 25 years after accusing an innocent man of rape, Tawana Brawley is finally paying for her lies, sort of. Last week, 10 checks totaling $3,764.61 were delivered to ex-prosecutor Stephen Pagonis. The first payments Brawley has made since a court determined in 1998 that she defamed him with her vicious hoax. A Virginia court this year ordered the money garnished from 6 months of Brawley's wages as a nurse there. So, by the way, there's a good chance that that is why she no longer lives there anymore, because that's one of the tricks to getting out of wage garnishment is if you change your job, they have to go back through the process of trying to garnish your wages.
That's true.
So, and that's a significant amount of her income, and it's going to be in perpetuity. She's going to die before that's ever paid off.
Yeah,
because with interest, they were saying it's like $400,000 now or something like that.
I really wish she would have showed up for that case, because I don't think she made up that lie.
No,
about Pagonis,
but that was
especially
11 years after the accusation.
Yeah,
and I guarantee you she was already in hiding at that point.
Yeah.
So she's an adult. She's trying to separate herself. If she goes, she's now going to be photographed. They're going to possibly follow her and find out where she lives now. Whereas otherwise she was able to stay in anonymity. So that's
not so much anymore.
No, not anymore. But you know what? Even with how high profile this was in 87, it's just not that big of a story. People aren't paying attention to it.
Not with everything that's going on in the world now.
And to be honest, she doesn't like stand out. Like her appearance doesn't really stand out.
No, I just looked at a picture of her. I could see her on the street tomorrow and wouldn't recognize her.
And wouldn't you'd be like, maybe, I'm being racist.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. Anyway, I'm conflicted on it. She was 15. She was clearly victimized by her stepfather.
Yeah.
And of course, as you said, by those other lawyers and hucksters and race pimps. I was conflicted when I read that story that you put in there about them exposing her to her coworkers, to her neighbor, and all that. Because on one hand, I'm like, I do think that the proper punishment for somebody who falsely accuses somebody is that punishment coming on them. But then obviously this is complicated because she's a victim too.
And she was 15.
She was 15.
I keep going back to the she was 15 thing.
Yeah.
I did stupid stuff when I was 15,
And it ain't like she financially benefited from any of this.
Not at all.
She was living in the highest crime city in the state of Virginia.
Like she was irreparably harmed by this whole thing. She's been in hiding her whole life since she's been 15 years old because of what happened to her.
Yeah. I'm shocked she didn't change her first name.
Yeah.
It's very weird to me with a name like that you wouldn't just change your first name.
Just change your whole name. Yeah.
Just change everything. Yeah. Like, what are we doing here?
Well, they said she goes by a different name, but maybe she just got married. We don't know,
Yeah. Well, but it was a hyphenated sort of kind of name. So I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's possible that she got married, but possible she went by the other one. But then they said her nurse's license, she had both of those names on it. So it's kind of complicated. I don't know.
It is. I think I wish there was a way for her to appeal this at this point, or for Stephen Pagonis's family or him to say, you know what, it's just not, we don't need the
all she'd have to do for everybody everywhere to drop it forever is go.
Yeah.
I was scared, but as we didn't cover this, but that stepfather's still alive.
Oh yeah, it was in that article. Maybe I should read
you
that
didn't
part.
finish that article, but yeah, so that's her stepfather is still alive. So
Still
there's
alive
a
and still a
chance.
jerk, by the way.
Yeah, so there's a really good chance that she is still in fear from that guy.
Yeah.
It was one of those things like I've heard the theory before, and it sounds like it's directionally correct. Is that when you hear someone who has like a baby voice, like a lot of times they're speaking in the voice from when they were victimized.
Absolutely, I've heard that
As people
before
get
too.
Yeah, they get frozen in that time period when they experience trauma.
Arrested
And so
Development.
it could be very true for her that she's kind of stunted psychologically, that she's still that 15, she views herself as that 15-year-old girl who's scared for her life. No matter her stepdad could be in a wheelchair, incapacitated, she's still scared because she's
Well, that's
stuck.
why I said a minute ago that I don't think we'll find out what happens, especially when her mom and stepfather are still alive. Because I think possibly when he dies, she might come forward with the truth.
But that's all it would take for Pagonis and I think anybody is if you just go, I was scared,
or for her to come back. Like, either there's two ways she could go with this. Let's be honest. She could either go that way and apologize and go that route, or she could come forward and say that I'm being persecuted, and can you believe I have to pay all this money, and have a fundraiser and get Al Sharpton back on her side and go that route too. And people would probably give her money to pay this off.
Okay, she might be able to get money to pay it off, but I don't think she'd be able to go the Al Sharpton. I don't think Al Sharpton I think he hates this case. I think he hates this case. Because that's the other thing we missed in the article. That's also in that article was Al Sharpton basically refuses to apologize to Pagonis, and like he tried to scapegoat himself by deflecting over to Trump because Trump made the accusation, not the accusations, but he doubled down on the accusations that were made about the Central Park 5, which was I'm pretty sure everybody's aware of that one, which was basically a rape hoax.
Another one I need to cover.
Yeah, and but it was 5 black guys being accused.
Yep.
And so he was like, Trump hasn't apologized for that, but I'm just so tired of that nonsense. I'm so tired, boss. I'm just so tired of. Did you do this evil thing that you should apologize for? Oh, but what about this other person?
Yeah.
And you're like, can you just say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong?
Never happened.
Yeah.
So let's hear what Al Sharpton. I'm going off script a little bit here, but
okay.
Let's hear what Al Sharpton has to say today about this case.
At the time, I remember people saying that Tawana was lying. And to this day, people think Tawana lied, you covered it up, and that there are reports that you told Tawana, just stick with the story, you're going to make money on it.
Well, first of all, I think now, looking 35 years later, those that said that should come up with where did she or anybody make money on it. We had just done the Howard.
Come on, you knew they thought they were making money on this. They really thought they were gonna until this, their plan got foiled by this grand jury investigation. That's what happened.
Yeah, you can't claim because it didn't work.
Yeah,
like can you imagine? We talked about bank robbery earlier. Can you imagine a bank robber going before the judge, being like, "Judge, I didn't even profit from this. I'm about to go to prison. Clearly, why would I do it if I wasn't going to profit off it?" That's insane.
Yeah. Exactly. I can't get through a 1 minute clip, a 1.5 minute clip without. It's my fault. He said that. I'm like, you're kidding me, right?
Yeah. Well, between the two of us, it's
yeah.
Beach case. Why would I go and cover up anything I believed to make money on it? We had just done the Howard Beach case. Why would I go and cover up anything I believed what the lawyers told? I never asked a 15-year-old girl what happened, and I said that. But I believed the lawyers, and I believed what was said, and I believe she deserved her day in court.
But two of those lawyers wound up, did they get disbarred or
One
suspended?
One of them, I think, was suspended.
C. Vernon Mason, Alton Maddox?
But again, when, like you mentioned, I did George Floyd. I believed Ben Crump. I didn't go do an autopsy on George Floyd. Activists go by what is presented and let the courts litigate it. And I say in the documentary I have friends now that says there's no doubt in their mind O.J. killed his wife. But a jury said he wasn't guilty. So we have to have the same standard. If you believe something and advocate on its behalf, let's go to court and see what the court says. How many times did we go to court and lose on police cases? We won on George Floyd. And that's what I did on Tawana Brawley 35 years ago because I believed it. I believed the lawyers had done their research and they testified. We told Reverend Sharpton, I don't sit up there and ask a 15-year-old girl any questions.
I wanted to pause that like 5 times, by the way.
A minute 35. A minute 35. We could have made it go 12 minutes.
I'm telling you what. First of all, I didn't do an autopsy on George. Did you read the autopsy report on George? You could have read the report.
It existed as well as the full video existed, and he definitely saw the full video before we all did.
Yeah, absolutely.
He knew what happened before we all knew.
Absolutely. That, and then the whole thing about OJ. The OJ jurors admitted that they found him innocent for racial purposes and not because they thought he was innocent, by the way. So yeah, we think he's guilty because the jurors said after the fact that we think he's guilty.
I also think the OJ conspiracy theory where he was protecting his son is a possibility too. You ever heard that one?
Yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah.
No, you're delusional.
No, I'm not delusional. I said It's a possibility. I think OJ killed his wife, but I'm just saying. I would understand if he
was protecting his son.
Why he wouldn't so let's just look at it this way. If he was protecting his son, then how he behaved afterward looks normal.
Makes sense.
When he kept going like, well, I'm gonna look for the real killers. By not looking for the real killers because he knew who the real killer was. Like, I'm not going to do anything that might help somebody unearth information because if it exonerates me, it's only going to point to my kid.
I'll tell you why I don't believe that theory. And I've heard that theory. I've looked into that theory.
I'm sure.
Because I want to say it was his left hand. It might have been the right side, but the evidence at the crime scene showed blood dripping on one side of the path of the killer walking away, and he showed up the next day with a cut on that hand. So that, in my mind, puts him there. Like his blood was there.
How do you get
her blood was
the glove not fitting though?
I mean,
I'm joking. We
must have quit.
I literally, if I hold my hand like this and put it, it just doesn't fit.
Well, do you know that he also stopped taking his, they found out that the prosecution was going to do that, and he stopped taking his arthritis medicine for a week or weeks before that, so his hands would swell up. That's a pretty good explanation.
That is the dumbest move in the history. It's the dumbest move.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I don't know who allowed that to happen, but they were wrong.
Anyway, Sharpton, I don't know. It's really tough to try to figure out. We can't read minds. It's so hard because I want to think that he knows that he's wrong.
I think he believes things at first, and then once he finds out the real information, he just doesn't.
He's pot committed.
Yeah,
exactly. He's spot committed. And that's what was so ridiculous about that statement where he's talking about what money do we make off it, because he's literally profited. We're not talking to 1987 Sharpton now. This is
Skinny sharp.
decades in the future
Mm-hmm.
where he has profited off of this stuff.
Absolutely, he has. Yeah, and
So,
and doesn't give one iota about Tawana Brawley. By the way, living her normal life as a nurse in Virginia or wherever she is now, does not give one care about her. I noticed he's not raising funds he raised funds to pay his portion to Pagonis. He's not doing that for her though.
Right. Yeah,
Not at all.
his portion I think was like 60-some thousand or whatever.
He uses people up and throws them away. Once it's done, once it's out of the spotlight, I have no need for that person anymore.
Yep. Which is also what predatory fake preachers do.
Yeah, like Crump.
It's just what he is. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
Any closing thoughts on this case?
No, I mean this case sucks is the reality, because like you want to be able to crap all over the person who falsely accused people. Like you'd love to just go crazy talking trash about them, but it's a really tragic story where like everything involved is tragic. That Pagodas had to go through all that garbage is tragic. Like we mentioned earlier, the family of the officer who committed suicide had to deal with all that for months. And as we know, the way information travels, there's probably a lot of people who maybe even, I mean, I don't know that they wouldn't know today, but it probably took a long time for them to get the news out. Oh yeah, by the way, our son wasn't a rapist who committed suicide.
Absolutely. I feel so bad for Harry Chris Jr.'s family because I mean, just in a small town, and I don't know how big the town is you live in, but I live in small town America, and word travels fast, and people believe stuff, you know.
And it is hard. It is really hard to convince somebody that something didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. And it's the reason why, like me personally, that's why there's few things that I struggle to forgive people for. Like I'm real quick to forgive people.
Yeah.
But if you try to assassinate my character, that's when it gets really tough, because it's so hard to come back from that. And they have to know that when they're doing it. So it's like, now you knew that even if like we said earlier, even if Tawana Brawley came out now and said it didn't happen, there would still be people who would be like, yeah, but she's just saying that because she's hoping she gets out of owing this money or whatever else. It's so you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So that's why there does need to be consequences for that. But this one's so complicated. It just sucks.
Well,
it's a sucky story. Thank you for having me.
When I went into this case, I was on that blame Tawana Brawley for making this up bandwagon. And the more I dug into it and found out all this stuff about her stepfather and stuff, I just started.
I didn't know any of that.
So bad for her.
Yep. I didn't know any of that. Yeah. I think I learned about this case like it was in the 90s sometime, probably around the Rodney King. So like 91. Was that 91?
Something like that.
So I would have been like 11.
Yeah.
That's when I started to like pay attention to the news a little bit more and stuff, you know? So that's when I would have heard about this stuff. And yeah, always.
I can't believe that girl made that up. That evil girl made up that story about these people that had nothing to do with it. But she had a reason to do that. And it was life and death in her mind, I would assume. You know,
I mean, that's the thing. We're not talking about somebody whose parent is a little excessive on the discipline. We're talking about a convicted murderer.
Yeah, absolutely. who there's record of him beating her.
Yes.
So, you know.
Anyway.
So that's the Tawana Brawley case. I'm glad I'm glad that I got everybody or the 6 people that are here to focus on something other than President Trump today. But that was very hard to go live after just learning that the former president had been shot in the ear. But I'm glad you were still able to join me. And I think I'm going to be seeing you in person in a couple of weeks. Is that correct? Did I hear that rumor correctly?
Yep. I should be doing my best to learn 13 songs I've never played in the next 13 days. And then
that's fun. That's fun. I didn't realize you were a performer at the festival.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be a backing musician for What name's he going by for music? I don't even know anymore.
Iggy Normus and the
Not down with.
something.
Oh, is it Iggy Normus
I don't know. I'm not.
and the Shadow Band?
The Shadow Band. Yeah, that's what it
Iggy
is.
Normus and the
So
Shadow
you're the
Band.
Shadow
Yeah, I'll
Band.
be the Shadow Band, which is pretty accurate.
Yeah.
All 12 of my Twitter accounts are Shadow Band.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so I'll be
I will.
playing at Patriot Jam, which is July 27th in Nashville. And if you guys want to just check out some cool music and hang out and meet cool people that are like-minded, go to the Twitter profile is at Patriot Jam Fest. And if you want to DM there is a link tree. This link, what I don't know how to break down what is it, link.tr.ee or some craziness
Something
like that. The Patriot Jam link tree. If you go on Linktree and search Patriot Jam, it's up there. And I think that link tree is also on the Twitter account, but you can DM them or message and they will give you information. The venue's not being released because we're not trying to have people with 22 long rifles. I'm just kidding. We're not trying to have any drama.
I mean, I have some haters. You have no idea the haters that I
Oh,
have
I'm
out there. You
sure.
never know.
Yeah.
You never know who's wants to show
Yeah,
up.
so we're avoiding the drama, but if you want to know the venue, you can reach out and I know it's only $10 at the door to get in. It's going to be limited space. Also, it's going to be streamed online on Rumble and on Twitter, I think.
YouTube and Twitter.
YouTube and Twitter.
I think all of the places.
So yeah, once again, if you go to the link tree for Patriot Jam, you'll get all those accounts and you'll know where it's going to be streamed and all that good stuff.
And if
then
you
the
want
only
to
other
see
thing-
Might
go
Be
ahead.
Wrong, you can see him on Monday evenings at 8:00.
So I'm not going to jinx it. I want to jinx it, but I'm not going to jinx it. We've got a huge guest, the best guest on Monday night. So this
And that's on the weekly Rumble.
on the
Rumble
weekly Rumble.
Rumble exclusive.
Rumble exclusive. If you go to Twitter, we have at the weekly Rumble on Twitter, and that'll let you know when we're streaming and all that stuff. And you'll find out who the guest is on Monday. But I'm not jinxing it for now.
But you're gonna tell me after the show, right?
Sure, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. But yeah, it should be fun. I'm sure we'll talk about Trump. Being
how could you
shot.
not?
I'm sure that'll be a topic.
Yeah.
And but anyway, thank you so much for having me. It's
Thanks
fun.
for coming. We'll have to do this again sometime. And I look forward to meeting you in person.
I'll see you.
I'll see everybody tomorrow at 4:30. We're still doing a Crime Lab episode tomorrow. Just because I'm here tonight doesn't mean I'm going to let you down at 4:30 Eastern every Sunday. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.